22. Joining me now, we have Portia Berry-Kilby, who's a political commentator. Good afternoon to you, Portia.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm still in shock that 2023 is just a few hours away. What is going on?
I know. I can't quite believe it myself. I always heard my grandma say, when did I get so old so fast? And now I'm believing it myself.
I know, right? It's going
not
so
right.
quickly. It's not great. What are you doing for New Year's Eve, out of interest?
Just having a fairly relaxed dinner and having just a pleasant evening in, see some fireworks, drink a bit of fizz.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Well, look, let's look at the big stories of 2022, shall we? What do you want to start with?
I think, first and foremost, we should start with the passing of Her Majesty the Queen, which seemed to shake the world when it happened, and was obviously a shock for everyone. Everyone knew it would happen at some point, but it was always one of those things that people didn't really consider happening. And of course, there was all of the ceremony that went with that, but also a sense that this is the end of the monarchy. What will happen now? It's all going to fall down around us. And thankfully, we haven't seen that. We've seen quite a smooth transition of power, and there will be the coronation of King Charles, I should say, in May. So I think it just really pays testament to the beauty of the British institutions that it continues. And in the period of having 3 prime ministers in a year, and all of the drama that surrounds that, we've had 2 monarchs and very little drama, despite Meghan and Harry's attempts to dramatise the royal family.
Really? You think they're trying to dramatise just Harry and Meghan? No one else has ever tried to do that, Diana, Charles.
Well, exactly. It's a tale as old as time. But I do think there is something quite remarkable about the fact that King Charles can go about his business and just be professional at all times. And then you have kind of the young guns, Harry and Meghan, over in the US, trying to cause drama and chaos. But some things will withstand their meddling, I hope.
So, you say that, but I remember the Dimbleby interview Prince Charles did when he was Prince Charles. This was in the 90s, and this was off the back of the Diana interview with Panorama on the BBC. Then he gave, as I said, a quite candid and I would even argue more revealing than what we heard in Harry and Meghan's documentary on Netflix. I was actually shocked to the bone. I was so young when it did come out, but I was so shocked in terms of what he was revealing about his infidelity, his wife's infidelity, Diana's own infidelity. And what I think it was staff also revealing that, it was just like each of them trying to hurt each other the most. I thought that was more scandalous than what we saw on Netflix, no?
Well, I don't think that's true. I think at the same time, King Charles, he respects the institution into which he was born and the system and the formalities that go with it. And granted, there is a change from when you're prince to then when you're king. And now I think he will, as there was rumoured that he'd take a more of a formal stance and distance himself from certain campaigns. Whereas you have Harry and Meghan with really, I think, no regard for the royal family at all. And you have flippant comments about the hierarchy. And, it's the royal family. What do you expect? There is obviously a hierarchy at play.
Again, you say that, but Charles wasn't happy with the woman that the monarchy told him to marry. He wasn't happy with Princess Diana.
No, and I think Diana also wasn't happy with the man she ended up marrying.
Oh, no, she loved him. She loved him, but ultimately she didn't have his heart, and that's what made her unhappy.
Yes, and I think Diana also kind of plays the public to her own advantage. She wasn't naive. She knew what she was doing 19? A lot of the time anyway.
At 19, you thought she knew what she was doing? I didn't know what I was doing when I was 19.
Well, I think we can both probably agree that Meghan had more of an idea of what she was doing, marrying into the royal family. And I think there is kind of a different era between King Charles and Diana, or when King Charles was Prince Charles and Harry and Meghan. And the various dramas that surround it are different in nature.
No, all I'm trying to point to is, I don't know, you're saying that, Charles respects the monarchy and the royal family and he's more dignified, when actually I could argue he pushed back more so than Harry and Meghan ever did, and ultimately marrying the woman he was told he shouldn't marry, and married for love as opposed to who the monarchy said he should marry. And I'm not criticising that. I'm just saying that it's very similar to what Harry and Meghan are doing, but that was accepted. And as it should be, he loves somebody else. And if Diana wasn't involved, it would have been this wonderful romantic story of, you know, love finding a way and, you know, standing up against the powers that be who was trying to dictate to him who he should marry. All I'm saying, they're not too dissimilar.
Well, I guess the apple never falls too far from the tree. If we want to play, kind of unite both sides.
That's what I'm trying to do. Yes, indeed. I'm just trying to say it's an issue that everybody has faced, not just Harry and Meghan. But going back to the Queen's passing, I tell you what, I lost my mother a few months later. And the grief, as in, it wasn't the same. I'm not saying it was the same, but it brought back similar elements of grief, which I think the nation went through when the Queen died. It was just so sad to the core.
I think truly, and I think it did you had all different factions, some who support the royal family, others who don't. But I think people were unified in supporting the Queen, and they could identify all of the duty she had paid throughout her life, a life of service. And people respected that, people valued that. And when you have people queuing up with rumours of 25-hour queues to see the lying in state, that says something about the deep devotion and respect people from all different corners of the UK and internationally across the world held for Her late Majesty.
Well, let's go back to something else you touched on a moment ago, Portia. The three Prime Ministers we've seen this year, so extraordinary. We're going to leave. We're going to get out with not a new one, which is great, right? So nice.
It is very nice, you know. You can never be too sure how long it will last. And they always say that a few days is a long time in politics, but we really did feel that, I think, a few months ago, when you had Liz Truss in for mere days, you know, a few weeks, and now we have Rishi. Things seem a little more constant and a bit more predictable, but it definitely did highlight the change, or the difference between the Prime Ministers and then the monarch. And I think it's also worth remembering that this all started with various parties and Partygate and Boris Johnson, which led to him getting ousted from number 10. So it is truly, it feels quite a whirlwind in terms of politics for Prime Ministers for 2022.
And for you, what would you say was the standout story, event, big news story of 2022?
2022, I think it has. I think between the Queen and the three Prime Ministers, they kind of dominated various factions. But I was also looking at the BBC kind of summary of news stories for the year. And the first one they covered was Novak Djokovic being basically deported from Australia. And I think what's shocking with that is realising that is a year ago and how far we've come since then. It seems that COVID is a long way behind us and that we are living basically restriction-free. But then you look at various countries' latent policies for COVID and you still have restrictions for entry into various countries, like the US. You can't go there unless you are double vaccinated. So maybe it isn't all so far behind us, and as we hope it might be.
Well, it definitely is definitely not what it was this time last year, right? Omicron, gosh, and it just feels like a different time entirely, doesn't it? Just thinking of, you know, you couldn't go and see friends, you couldn't have them come round, couldn't go out to a restaurant. That seems like another world entirely. But Portia, have yourself a lovely New Year's Eve. Enjoy those fireworks, enjoy your fizz. Really good talking to you.